Hi, I'm Rosanne and welcome to my garden. Having the right garden tool for the job at hand can make all the difference between a pleasurable experience and a frustrating experience. Today in this video, I'd like to show you some of my favorite garden tools when I work with trees, shrubs, perennials, and annuals. Let's go inside where the tools are. As you can see, we have a lot of gardening tools. Some we use more than others, but we do try to store the tools clean. We rinse the tools, especially the digging tools, after a long gardening day before putting them away. And we also like to store them so that all the tools are visible and easy to find. I basically think of my tools as either digging tools, weeding tools, pruning tools, or special purpose tools. Let's start today by talking about digging tools. This is called a trench spade, and it is my go-to tool for working with perennials. The blade of the shovel is 5.5 inches by 14 inches. The narrow, long shape allows you to dig deep holes without disturbing the surrounding soil or plants. It also allows you to dig out plants without damaging them because the step or ledge on top of the blade stays well above the ground, so you don't crunch your plants. This is especially important to me when I dig up perennials for dividing in the spring. The long blade also allows you to dig up deep, healthy root balls. Here are two more spades that I use quite a bit when I'm gardening. I like this little one in particular. It sort of is a cross between my trench spade and a trowel. It's good for small projects. It doesn't have a lot of curve to it, and we keep the edge sharpened. We do that about once a year with our digging tools, unless we're using them a lot. And you might also notice it's shiny. It's stainless steel, and whenever possible, I highly recommend getting stainless steel tools because they last longer. They do not rust and they hold an edge. I also like to get wooden handled tools because for me they're lighter to work with. You can't have a garden without a shovel, and this shovel is particularly useful. It's a round point shovel, and you can see it's quite curved. Spades are typically a lot flatter. And this is one of my husband's favorite tools because he uses it for digging holes, for digging big holes, like for planting a tree, because it's so efficient. It also has, if you can see it, a very long handle, so you have a lot of leverage when using the tool. It also is stainless steel, and it also is kept with a sharp edge so that you can easily cut through roots and hard soil. I think of garden trowels as small-handled little shovels or spades that are important digging tools for detail work, such as when working with annual bedding plants. As you can see, we have quite a range of blade widths ready for any small digging job, ranging from wide, shallow holes to narrow, deep holes, such as those used with bulbs. Now I'd like to show you some pruning tools, and I'm going to start with the one I use on trees. Again, we have about 50 trees in our yard, so having a good tree pruning tool is important. This is a pruning stick tree pruner, and it is actually pretty new. It's one of my newer tools, and I got it to be able to reach those branches that you just can't get without a ladder. And getting a ladder out can be pretty inconvenient. So this tool allows me to get very high into a tree. There's just a pulling action here, a mechanism. Just pull it down and the blade closes. This pruning stick can trim branches about 1 inch thick, which is pretty good, and it can do it quite easily. Another really important pruning tool are my loppers. We actually have two pairs. The red-handled ones are a lot heavier. They're my husband's. These are real nice and lightweight, good for me. They do two things. They cut branches that are about up to 1 inch in diameter with ease, lots of leverage with the long handles. Plus they also let you reach branches that you ordinarily wouldn't be able to. If there's one tool that I use every day I garden, and even several times a day when I garden, it would be my pruners. Some people call them secateurs. They are absolutely invaluable for cutting those stray branches, deadheading, what have you. When you're walking around the garden, it's just great to have these. I also recommend, if you buy some, and you can, get a holster or a sheath that you can wear in your garden clothes, so that you can always have these handy. The blades of the pruners, loppers, and tree stick pruner are what is called bypass, meaning that the two hooked blades cut when the blades pass each other, much like scissors work. This generally gives good clean cuts when cutting single stems. Another fantastic pruning tool are my rose snips. These are almost like my pruners, only they're quite a bit smaller, and they too are bypass, and I use them for much smaller cuts. Snips are perfect tools for precise deadheading, cutting off spent hosta stems or daylily stems, or cutting herbs. I only use these on green, fleshy growth, never woody stems, as they are somewhat delicate. Although my snips have hooked blades, here are my husband's snips with a straight blade. During the height of summer, I'm never without my snips. The pruning tools I've showed you so far are for really cutting single branches or single stems. Sometimes we have the need for a pruning tool or shears that can prune a shape, such as like pruning boxwood or small shrubs, where you don't care about the individual stems, you're just going after the shape, so you cut multiple stems at the same time. And here I have my hedge shears. This is a new toy of mine to replace some older ones that aren't doing so well. And you can see they have a nice sized handle. They're wood handles, and their action is incredibly smooth, and it again makes short work out of what could be, a long task. The last pruning tool I'd like to show you is my topiary shears. It has a smaller handle and smaller blade than the hedge shears. This allows for up-close and very detailed shape pruning. When pruning my boxwoods, I usually use my hedge shears first and then do the fine-tuning with my topiary shears. The next group of tools I'd like to show you are my weeding tools, and I'd like to start with my long-handled weeder. It in fact has such a long handle, I'm not sure the top of it is in camera range, although now it is. You can see it's a diamond shape, and all four edges are incredibly sharp. That allows you to both push and pull beneath the ground level to cut the stems of the weeds. Another weeding tool is this razor hoe weeder. It comes in both right-handed and left-handed versions. With one sharp edge, you can easily pull the blade across the soil toward you, cutting off small weeds below the soil surface. You might have noticed that we have bright ribbons attached to many of our hand tools. We do this to help keep track of our tools. I like wood handle tools and natural looking tools, and those are the kind that can get lost in a flower bed and you don't find them till the end of the season, or maybe they're in the compost. So at any rate, this is a kind of a nifty trick if you need to keep track of your tools, which I do. Another tool that makes easy work of weeding is this hand loop weeder. Both of the edges are incredibly sharp, and it allows you to drag the tool right below the soil level, cutting the stems of the weeds off, all really quickly. Next, I'd like to show you some of my what I'll call special purpose tools or multi-purpose tools because they don't easily fit into any category. And I'd like to start with my Hori Hori knife. Now this is a beautiful new Hori Hori knife. I actually won it as a door prize. Lucky me. And I haven't had the heart to use it that much because I have another Hori Hori knife that I do use like all the time. So I always end up going to my old tool instead of my new tool because they actually do work the same. Hori Hori knives are incredibly versatile tools that cut and dig. One edge of the blade is smooth while the other edge of the blade is serrated. This allows for any kind of cutting in the garden. Plus, the blade's curved shape and pointed tip make it somewhat of a narrow trowel, perfect for digging small, narrow holes. I use both the cutting and digging features of my Hori Hori knife when working with small bedding plants or patches of Irish moss. Here's my edger. I just love this tool. I don't use it all that much, but boy, this is one of those examples of having the right tool for the job makes all the difference. I use it when I want a nice sharp edge separating maybe a bed from grass or sidewalk from grass. When I divide perennials, which I do mostly in the spring, not exclusively, but mostly, I could not be without this tool. And that is, I've got two sizes of the same tool, and that is the perennial planting spade. Some people call it a bulb planting spade, although I've never used either of these for planting bulbs. But I really use them for easily dividing perennials, particularly ones, well, maybe hosta, that have very hard cores. You just slice through the perennial and you make a very clean cut. Another specialty tool that I don't use that often, but boy, when I need it, it is a handy tool. These are called the dibbers, and at this point I'd like to say different people may call tools different things. So please forgive me if I call a tool something different than you might call a tool. Dibbers come in all shapes and sizes, but this one is ideal for creating little clean holes for small bulbs. Spring tulips are lovely, but creating deep planting holes in between other plants can be a challenge, especially if planting dozens or even hundreds of bulbs. That's why I'm a huge advocate of using an auger. It makes light work of an otherwise daunting task. This auger attaches to a 1/2 inch drill and can easily dig 8-inch deep holes that are only 3 inches wide. Here I have a few quirky little tools. Some of them are indulgences, most of them aren't, but a brush to clean your pots. It's really important to keep your pots clean, to cut down on funguses or bacteria that could overwinter. So I rinse my pots and I scrub them. I actually don't use bleach in my clay pots, but I think a good scrubbing, getting them clean, storing them for the winter does the trick, and this is a great tool for that. Another little quirky tool that that gets a lot of use is this seed trowel. Some people call it a seed trowel. Others, I've seen it also online called a widger. I use it for a lot of things. It's really narrow. I use it for caring for my Irish moss, for getting in between cracks of flagstone, like the Hori Hori knife. And I also use it in the spring when I'm working with seedlings and pricking out my new seedlings, putting them in bigger pots. This is a wonderful tool to really work with those tiny, tiny little plants and get deep little holes. It's really, I never saw anything like it until I got it as a gift. And now I have 2 of them. I just love it. Here's another specialty tool. This is a reciprocating saw, and it's used primarily to cut really thick branches. You get really clean, sharp cuts. And we would really use this in March when we do most of our big, serious pruning when the trees are dormant, but I also use this for dividing Siberian iris, or Iris siberica, the toughest roots known to me of any plant I've ever dealt with. So at any rate, when I divide Siberian iris, this tool is great. My husband, the vegetable gardener in the family, has his own favorite tools. When he recently upgraded his tools after getting an allotment in our local community garden, these were his top picks: a hoe for weeding, a garden rake for preparing seed beds, a fork for lifting and moving compost or mulch, and a narrow rake for cultivating, removing weeds, or spreading mulch. You might be wondering, of the more than 20 tools I've shown you, what are my absolute top picks? For the kind of gardening I do, my top 3 tools would be the trench spade, the hand pruners, and a medium-sized garden trowel. These are the true workhorses in my garden. I hope you enjoyed this video on garden tools. Thanks for watching.